Let me ask you something. What happens to capitalism when nobody has a job to buy anything? What happens when robots and AI do all the work, but regular people have no income? What happens when the system that depends on consumers suddenly has no consumers left? Because that is exactly where we are heading. Right now, companies are racing to automate every job they can, to replace every worker with a machine or algorithm. And they think this is going to make them richer. But they are not asking the most important question. If we eliminate all the jobs, who the hell is going to buy all their products? This is not some distant future problem. This is happening right now. AI is replacing call center workers. Robots are replacing factory workers. Self-checkout is replacing cashiers. Algorithms are replacing analysts. And every CEO is celebrating like they just solved all their problems. But they did not solve anything. They just created the biggest problem capitalism has ever faced. Because capitalism does not work without consumers, and consumers need income. And income comes from jobs. So what happens when the jobs are gone? That is what we are breaking down today. The fatal flaw in the automation dream, and why chasing robot workers might just destroy the entire system. Now, before we go any further, if you want to understand how this system actually works and what happens when it breaks, hit that subscribe button right now. We are Money Trap Channel. We break down the economic realities that nobody else wants to talk about. No tech bro fantasy nonsense. No billionaire propaganda. Just the brutal truth about what happens when capitalism automates itself out of existence. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this might be the most important economic issue of our lifetime. Literally. Alright, let me start with some numbers that should terrify you. A study by Pew Research found that 90% of American jobs are at high risk of automation from artificial intelligence. 90%. That is not a typo. Almost every job in America could be replaced by a machine in the near future. Goldman Sachs did a similar study globally and found only 9% of jobs worldwide are at similar immediate risk. And the difference? America has way more service jobs, office jobs, the kind of jobs that can be replaced by software instead of expensive robots. Here is what that means. We have been told for decades that getting an education and working a white-collar job was the path to security. That blue-collar workers would be replaced by machines, but knowledge workers would be fine. That was a lie. It turns out replacing someone who types into a computer is way easier than replacing someone who fixes plumbing or builds houses. The college-educated middle class is actually more at risk than manual laborers, and nobody prepared for this. Nobody planned for this. And now it's too late. But here is where it gets really dark. Companies are already acting on this. A survey of almost 700 companies found that businesses using AI in their call centers hired 89% fewer new workers than companies not using AI. 89%. But it gets worse. Companies that added AI to existing call centers laid off an average of 26% of their employees within just 1 year. 1 year. That is not gradual change. That is a jobs massacre. And call centers are just the beginning. This is coming for every industry, every profession, every office building in America. Now you might be thinking, okay, companies cut costs and fire workers. That is capitalism. That has always happened. But here's the part they are not thinking about. Those workers they fired, they were also customers. When you fire 26% of your workforce, you just eliminated 26% of potential customers who had income to spend. And when every company does this at the same time, you eliminate most of your customer base. You cannot have an economy based on consumption when consumers have no money to consume with. Let me tell you a story. In 1914, Henry Ford doubled his factory workers' salaries to $5 a day. The legend says he did this so his workers could afford to buy Ford cars. That story is mostly nonsense. Ford actually did it to reduce turnover and keep talent away from competitors. But the myth contains a deeper truth. You cannot sell products to people who cannot afford to buy them. Ford understood something that modern CEOs seem to have forgotten. Workers are also customers. Destroy your workforce and you destroy your market. But modern capitalism has found a workaround. And it is honestly brilliant in the most dystopian way possible. They are just going to stop selling to regular people. They are going to focus exclusively on selling to rich people and other businesses. To the people who own the machines, instead of the people replaced by machines. And before you think that sounds insane, let me show you it is already happening. Right now. In an industry you probably participate in, video games. The video game industry is now bigger than movies, music, and television combined. And they have perfected something called freemium pricing. Most people play for free. But a small group called whales spend thousands or even millions of dollars on a single game. The free players exist to be content for the whales, to be the audience that makes the whales feel special for spending so much money. This is the future of capitalism. A few rich people spending absurd amounts while everyone else exists as unpaid entertainment. And this model is spreading. Luxury car sales are at all-time highs. Lamborghini sold more cars in the last 10 years than in their entire previous history. Private jets, designer brands, luxury real estate, all booming. Why? Because there are more rich people than ever before, and they are getting richer. Meanwhile, regular people are getting poorer. Your ability to work is worth less every year. But if you own assets, if you own stocks or businesses or real estate, you are doing better than ever. The value of human labor is stagnant or declining. The value of assets is exploding. This is the split happening in real time. People who work for money are losing. People who own things that make money are winning. And automation is accelerating this split. Every job automated is another worker who cannot afford to buy things. But it is also another boost to the profits of whoever owns the machines. More productivity, lower costs, higher returns for investors, great for asset owners, devastating for workers. And since most people are workers, devastating for most people. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Universal Basic Income, UBI. Just give everyone free money from the government so they can still buy things even without jobs. Problem solved, right? Wrong. So wrong. Let me tell you about the biggest UBI experiment ever done in America. 1,000 people in Texas and Illinois got $1,000 a month for 3 years. No strings attached. Funded by Sam Altman, the guy running OpenAI. The same guy whose company is trying to automate as many jobs as possible. Here is what happened. The people getting UBI worked less. Obviously, they had income so they did not need to work as much. But even with the extra $1,000 per month, they still struggled financially. Food security improved in year 1, then got worse again. Mental health improved, then declined. Because $1,000 per month is not enough to live on in America. And if you think the government is going to give you enough to live comfortably without working, you have not been paying attention to how governments operate. But even if they did, even if UBI was generous enough to cover all your needs, you would fall into one of two classes. You would either be living off government handouts, barely getting by, with no control over your life. Or you would be in the class of people who own the businesses, complaining about paying taxes to fund those handouts. There are no winners in this scenario, just different types of losers. And here is the really messed up part. This is happening slowly enough that nobody is stopping it. Outsourcing destroyed entire American cities. Millions of manufacturing jobs disappeared. Did we stop it? No. We let it happen gradually over decades until it was too late to reverse. Automation is the same thing. It is happening gradually enough that we are not treating it like the crisis it is. But it is accelerating fast. Tesla is betting its entire future on humanoid robots that can replace workers. They claim these robots will cost between $20,000 and $30,000 each. Even if they actually cost $100,000, that is still cheaper than paying a worker for 2 years. And once you buy the robot, it works 24/7 with no benefits, no vacation, no complaints. From a business perspective, it is a no-brainer. Replace expensive, unreliable humans with cheap, reliable machines. But from a societal perspective, it is suicide. Because here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Your greatest asset is not your house, not your investment portfolio, not your savings. For most people, your greatest asset is the hours you can sell over your lifetime. The 80,000 to 100,000 hours you will work. Those hours are worth over $1 million. More if you are smart or lucky. That is your wealth. That is your asset. And automation is destroying the value of that asset, making your time worthless, making you worthless in the eyes of capitalism. Think about what that means. If your only asset is your labor, and that labor becomes worthless, you have nothing. No bargaining power, no security, no future. You become completely dependent on either finding one of the few remaining jobs or hoping the government gives you enough to survive. That is not a future. That is a nightmare. And we are walking into it with our eyes wide open because CEOs are too focused on quarterly profits to see the disaster they are creating. Let me paint you the real picture of what is coming. Not some utopian future where robots do all the work and we relax. The actual future based on current trends. A small class of people who own assets living incredibly well, buying luxury goods from each other, investing in each other's companies. A massive underclass living on inadequate government assistance, fighting for the few remaining jobs, unable to afford anything beyond basic survival. And companies catering almost exclusively to the wealthy because everyone else has no money. This is not speculation. This is already happening. A report by Moody's Analytics found that the top 10% of households by income now account for over half of all consumer spending. Over half. 10% of people doing half the spending. And that percentage is increasing every year. Companies are already shifting their products up market, making luxury versions of everything, or going down market, making bottom barrel garbage for people with no money. The middle is disappearing because the middle class is disappearing. And the worst part? Nobody is planning for this. Not governments, not businesses, not individuals. Everyone is just assuming it will work out somehow, that the market will solve it, that technology will save us, but it will not. The market does not care if you starve. Technology does not care if you have no job. And governments are too gridlocked to do anything meaningful until it is way too late. So what do? How do you prepare for this? First, understand that your labor is becoming less valuable every year. Do not bet your entire future on being able to trade hours for dollars. Start building assets, even small ones. Anything that generates income without requiring your time. Second, develop skills that machines cannot easily replace. Hands-on work, creative work, human connection work. Things that require physical presence or emotional intelligence. Third, do not wait for the government or your employer to save you. They will not. You need to take care of yourself. But even if you do everything right individually, that does not solve the systemic problem. We cannot all be rich. We cannot all own assets. The math does not work. Most people will always need to work for income. And if those jobs disappear, most people are screwed. This is not about individual responsibility. This is about a system that is breaking. And when the system breaks, even the people who think they are winning will lose. Because you cannot have capitalism without consumers. And you cannot have consumers without income. And you cannot have income without jobs. This is the fundamental contradiction that nobody wants to address. Companies want to eliminate workers to cut costs. But workers are also consumers. Eliminate the workers and you eliminate the consumers. Eliminate the consumers and you have nobody to sell to. Eliminate the buyers and your business fails. It is that simple. You cannot automate your way to infinite profit if nobody can afford to buy what you are selling. The video game industry figured this out. They keep free players around as content for the paying whales. But that only works because playing the game is free. You cannot apply that model to food, housing, and healthcare. People cannot just exist for the entertainment of the wealthy while they starve. Well, they can, but not for long. Not without massive social instability. And social instability is bad for business. Even rich people need a functioning society to stay rich. So here is the reality nobody wants to say out loud. Capitalism cannot function without workers who have enough income to be consumers. You can optimize. You can automate. You can cut costs. But at the end of the day, somebody needs to have money to buy your products. And if you automate away all the jobs, nobody has money. And if nobody has money, your business dies. No amount of efficiency or innovation changes that basic fact. You need consumers. Consumers need income. Income comes from jobs. Without jobs for everyday people, capitalism does not work. This is not anti-capitalism. This is just math. The system depends on workers being consumers. Destroy one side of that equation and the whole thing collapses. We are watching it happen in slow motion. Job quality declining, wages stagnating, automation accelerating, consumer debt exploding, people working multiple jobs and still falling behind. This is not sustainable. Something has to give. Either we find a way to maintain consumer purchasing power without traditional jobs, or the system breaks. Those are the only options. And right now, we are not choosing either one. We are just letting it happen. Letting companies automate without any plan for what comes after. Letting inequality grow without any plan to address it. Letting the system decay without any plan to fix it. Because the people making these decisions are insulated from the consequences. They are asset owners. They will be fine no matter what happens. It is everyone else who will suffer. And by the time enough people suffer that something has to change, it will already be too late to prevent massive damage. So that is where we are, racing toward mass automation without any plan for maintaining consumer demand. Building an economy that depends on consumers while eliminating their ability to consume. Celebrating labor-saving technology while destroying the very foundation capitalism needs to function. And wondering why everything feels broken. This is why. Without jobs for everyday people, capitalism does not work. And we are about to find out what that looks like. The hard way. If you found this terrifying, make sure you watch the video coming up next on your screen. We are going even deeper into what happens when the system breaks and what you can actually do about it. This is Money Trap Channel. We give you the truth nobody else will say. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. And remember, without jobs for everyday people, capitalism does not work. Now go prepare for what is coming.